If you go back to the way you were before the world molded you, you'll know where your purpose is.
I want everyone to hear, you had a bank account that was $1.4 million in the red.
Yes.
What was your first thought?
I was built for this.
Damn.
I'm Amy Porterfield, ex-corporate girl turned CEO of a multi-seven-figure business. But it wasn't all that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the budget, and the time to focus on growing my small but mighty business. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you'll see the business I have today. One that changes lives and gives me more freedom than I ever thought possible. One that used to only exist as a daydream. I created the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur or one in the making who's looking to create a business that makes an impact and a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome back to Online Marketing Made Easy. Are you ready for an extra special episode today? I say it's extra special because if you've been following the podcast for a bit of time, you know that I did something really cool with my good friend Jasmine Star. I co-hosted 5 episodes for her podcast that I then get to post on mine as well. Here's what it looked like. Jasmine invited me to be a co-host on the Jasmine Star Show. I went out and found 5 amazing guests to interview that I was just like really excited to talk to. And I knew you all would find value in the interviews as well. I invited them to Nashville. They flew out to Nashville and we had amazing conversations with them. So the first one that aired was Gary V. So Gary Vaynerchuk was on the podcast a few weeks back. Here's the second one. This one is with Fawn Weaver. Now, I'm not going to give you her whole bio because we get into that in the episode with Jasmine, but I will share something that we didn't share on the podcast episode, and it's this. Fawn is one of only 6 Black women in America who have founded and led $1 billion companies. Now, yes, that needs to change. We need more Black women leading big companies like that. So I get that. But I wanted to take a beat and really point out that the guest today is on that list. So if you're curious who else is on that list, well, Janice Bryant Howroyd, Dr. Iman Abzeed, Sheila Johnson, Oprah Winfrey, Rihanna, and Fawn Weaver. Can you imagine being on that list? Like, it's incredible. Such a huge accomplishment. She is a force. I think my most favorite thing about her, beyond her brains, was her unshakable confidence. Like in my mind, I'm like, give me an ounce of that. It was just incredible to be in her presence. I think you're going to feel that. You're going to learn a lot. Pay attention to her leadership strategies and skills. I thought that was a big part of the episode as well. I won't make you wait any longer. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, a place that we talk about business, mindset, marketing, and today, whiskey. But before we get there, I am so excited because I am here with my guest co-host, Amy Porterfield, who's just brought the done fire. Amy, thank you for being here.
Hello, friend. Excited to do this.
Nobody's representing Tennessee better than Amy until the
say,
one and only,
until our guest.
Fawn Weaver is CEO of the world's most awarded whiskey brand, Uncle Nearest. Y'all, Uncle Nearest is near and dear to our hearts. The CEO founder is here to share her story, but beyond that, beyond talking about spirits, this spirited entrepreneur is going to blow your mind with taking what she's taken in her business and teaching how to apply it to yours. So welcome to the show, Fawn Weaver.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. Amy,
Yes.
now talk to me about the elusive name Fawn Weaver in Tennessee and how you got connected. How did we get this connection?
Fawn is a celebrity around here. Your name has come up a million times. And so my husband and I have literally gotten into whiskey. And so every time I say that, everyone's like, do you know Fawn's story? And do you know Uncle Nearest? So from just being an enthusiast, that came about. However, I am obsessed with what you've done in entrepreneurship, especially as a woman, especially as a Black woman. You have paved the way, you have gone first, and there's a lot of women listening here today that can learn so much from what you've done. So selfishly, I just want to know all the things and how you've gotten to where you've gotten and all the lessons you've learned. So I'm excited for today.
Well, fun.
I'm excited.
So one of the things that Amy and I were talking as we prepped the show was this idea of you are a brand builder.
Yes.
Everything that I have done my homework. I know you're an LA girl. We're going to get into all of that. But as we start the show, I want somebody hearing right now, like, what's in this for me? And if the one thing that people walk away with is like a brand can be built.
Yes.
And a brand can be filled with soul.
Yes.
And a brand can be respectful. And it can be filled with love. And it can be filled with history. All of these things that you've done in iterations of your career. We're going to get to all of that.
Yeah.
But Amy had mentioned something. She's like, there's something about Fawn's story where she talks about owning the land.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we talk about this in the context of like own the land that is your brand.
Yes.
But then you literally went and went up to everybody and you like literally own the land.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But when we talk about owning the land from a brand perspective, from a business perspective, and you look back on your very illustrious career, what does that mean for you?
It starts with owning the online real estate. So a lot of people don't understand. They will come up with a brand name. They'll come up with all of this stuff. They'll get locked into it. They'll fall in love with it. But they forgot to check to make sure the online real estate is available. So that's the social media handles. That's the URL. That is all of those pieces. So everything that I've ever built, I started with that. And the IP and making sure that is solidified. So on one side of it, that is the real estate that I begin with always. But I go directly from that to buying physical real estate to be able to tie the story into. And that's just me.
Amazing.
Everyone is different, but I truly believe if you do not own the land, you don't own the brand. So I always start with the land. I got a text message from my attorney this morning, one of them, and the subject line said tequila. And so I read it and he says, so I hear you're interested in tequila. And he's giving me this. And I was like, where did he get this from? I was just speaking somewhere and I was talking about this importance of owning the land and how I went. And the reason why I'm the largest Grand Champagne vineyard owner in Cognac, France was before I launched a cognac company. I was making sure that I owned the land.
Baby,
in the
are we going to
vineyards.
go to Jalisco?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
do you need somebody in Mexico? Conmigo. Let's go.
That is too funny. But I was literally making a joke about if y'all see me walking the grounds of Jalisco, then you'll know what tequila is coming. But I won't start a tequila brand from America. I will first buy the land, buy the distillery, and then you'll see a product. So I always begin with ownership. I think brands are rented. I begin with the ownership and I build the brand on top of the ownership.
Okay, so when you're talking about ownership, and we're talking to a lot of people who are building online businesses, they will never have anything physical to buy, but that ownership, give me some tips for the people listening, how to own their brand in a bigger way.
But that's online real estate, right? So a lot of people built their presence on social media.
Yes.
Biggest mistake you can
I was
make.
gonna say, that's
you don't own
dangerous.
this. You don't own
Amen.
it. So the URL you own, that can become the most valuable thing that you have. And if you tie it in with intellectual property and you own both of those, then you actually have a physical own the land. It's just the land is online. And, you know, with all the people trying to send us into a metaverse, the land may always be online.
So true.
People buying houses in the metaverse. But that is how I look at it is whatever I'm building upon, I must own it. And own it in such a way that someone can't come and take it.
Yes.
That's the biggest piece. And so that's how I always begin.
Was there a time in your life or business? It feels like there's an undercurrent of capital T truth. I must own this. Has there been a time in your life where you felt like you did not own something or something was taken from you because you didn't own it?
No.
Okay.
So when you look at the history of African Americans in this country, and it still is the case to this day, I was teaching at Harvard not long ago. That sounds like such a name drop. But I was teaching at Harvard, and there were a lot of people in the class that were of color, right? And I was talking about this notion of building generational wealth, and we can complain about the wealth gap, but if we are not making sure that we own the land and own the businesses to pass to the next generation, then every generation starts from scratch, which means the wealth gap is not closing, but that's on us. And so I'm having this conversation and someone raised their hand, an African-American gal, and she was like, yeah, but they can take it from us like they've always taken the land. So the thought process was if I just sit on cash and if I spend it in my lifetime, I don't run the risk of them stealing it from me. And I said, let's back up. I get it. Central Park used to be Seneca Village. all people of color for the most part, right? You go to Tulsa, that big old freeway through it, that used to be Black Wall Street. You go, like, you can go across this country, and most major park that we love, if you dig deep, Black people likely owned property there. So we still, as a group of people, have to get out of this mentality that they can just run through our properties, run freeways through our properties that states. So that's something that we as a people have to get over. So for me, that's a huge part of it, of saying, yes, they could take land from us when we didn't have power. We didn't have money, when we didn't have political connections. Let them try to run a freeway through my distillery.
Yeah.
So I think the ownership comes from that, because for so long there was a property that I bought in Portland in the Pearl District, and I bought it specifically because until the 60s, early 70s, Black people weren't allowed to buy in the Pearl District. So I bought there not because I planned to move to Portland, but because I wanted to own land someplace that we weren't allowed to. The property that I own in Martha's Vineyard in Edgartown, that the property sale leases and all the rest of that stuff literally had in the deeds that they are not allowed to sell or lease to a person that is not of the white race.
Whoa.
And so when that's your heritage, I'm gonna own everything.
So when we hear about that, and we hear the undercurrent of capital T with the truth, capital T, truth, it starts in childhood.
Yes.
It starts with you in Los Angeles, coming from a family that had a lot of connections in the music industry. And then you have great parents, but you decide to go your own way when you're 15. And you end up in a homeless shelter. 3. Can you bring us there? A little bit of that, because I think it acts as the foundation of where you go from there.
Yeah, no, sure. I just walked through Covenant House, Atlanta a few weeks ago. And even though the last of 3 homeless shelters that I was in was Covenant House in Hollywood, they had been inviting me to this one in Atlanta. And I said, well, let me go in. And it was so amazing walking into the bedrooms with the bunk beds, because I was like, I was in a bedroom with a bunk bed with other people. And you go and you have lunch in a cafeteria, or dinner in a cafeteria, and you're just happy to have food. And you walk into a closet, and I don't know why all clothes that's given all smells the same. Like, it has like this kind of, this like mildewy, kind of weird, musky kind of, right? But I walked into this closet, and I remember how grateful I was that they had a closet full of clothes. It didn't matter that it was a little musty, because I could wear that clothes to go out to work and to create a life for myself. And so that foundation at 18 years old of being in Covenant House is, that serves as such an incredible foundation. And maybe that's why I'm like, I'm gonna own everything. It's because I went from homeless shelter to homeless shelter to homeless shelter. And so I didn't own anything. And now that I have the opportunity to not just make sure that I own, but that I'm holding it to pass it to the next generation, so they start off owning. Almost every Black person in this country is first generation money. If we have money, we're first generation. And so, because even if our parents had money, like was the case with my family growing up, but then they made certain decisions that by the time I was 1, that entire financial situation changed. My father decided to go into ministry, but he didn't have a huge savings. He actually had a very high consumption. And then now all of a sudden you don't sign another contract with Motown. You have no money coming in. And so I grew up in this huge house, but we didn't really have anything. So the juxtaposition of understanding, well, even when they lost everything, they didn't have money for the fancy cars that they owned, like meaning to put gas in them to get them off of Skyline Drive, down the hill, and they couldn't pay their tab at the Country Mart down the street as they were getting food over time. But what they owned was their home. So even when they had no money, they were able to sell that home, go buy another large home in Pasadena. So we didn't have actual cash, but we had a home. So when my father passed away, he didn't really have a whole lot to leave to my mother, but he had the home and he sold the home. And we've subsidized, but for the most part, he was able to take care of her for a good solid 10 years after his passing, because he owned the home. Now, I wish he had done some other things different.
And that's what you're teaching. That's what you're teaching. That's what you're teaching. That was one of the things, aims.
Okay, so one of the things that we noticed when we went and poured into you before you came here is that you believe that you should give all your secrets away now.
Absolutely.
So you
in real time.
Yeah, so you referenced Shoe Dog, Phil Knight. You said, great, he wrote a book, but what he's saying is 20 years later, we can't really apply now. You're giving it all now. Why do you feel like you should give all your secrets away today?
Because Black people don't have the ability to wait.
Ooh.
We are so far behind because of where we began. So if you think about it this way, all of our ancestors were incredibly intelligent. When you're leaving the shores of Africa to come here, you've got millions of people that die in the Middle Passages, right? Millions of Africans that die there. America's the last stop. So there's a ton that are dropped off in the Caribbean. There's dropped off along the way. Most died before they ever got to America because of how hard that journey was. Imagine you've got bodies literally naked, laying next to each other, side by side, chained. You can't get up to go to the bathroom. You can't. So you've got sicknesses just all over. Imagine the amount of strength that those people had to have mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And so I look back at them and go, that's who I'm the descendants of. But they were intelligent. In Africa, you come to America, you're dumb. You don't know the language. So people came to this conclusion that Black people were dumb, and that became a part of the story, that we didn't understand how to read and to write. Well, no kidding. It was outlawed to teach us how to read and write in English. So if we were still speaking our native language, we were intelligent. But I think I'm intelligent as hell. You drop me in the middle of China right now, around a bunch of Chinese who don't speak English, I'm not going to be that smart. And so that's the piece I think people miss, is that Africans were not unintelligent. We simply didn't speak English. And so we have been so far behind because we weren't allowed to learn English. We weren't allowed to be taught. So we were learning it from hearing it in slang. So imagine, again, drop me in China, and imagine I'm trying to learn the Chinese language from people who don't want to teach it to me simply by listening to it. Can you imagine how I would botch that language?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Yes.
So talk about slang and all, like forget slang. I mean, I would botch it because I'm teaching myself. So you have generations of people who were teaching based on hearing a language they didn't know, and that passed down from generation to generation. And then we couldn't get into college. There were all these educational barriers. Then, I mean, when you start talking about the redlining, which we were mentioning earlier, with all of the redlining, put all of the Blacks in an area where there's no money. But how did the schools get paid for? Tax dollars, property tax. We didn't own any property. So our schools were getting no dollars. And so you have these suburbs, all the white kids are side by side becoming more and more intelligent, getting into college. We weren't able to do that. And so people look back at it and they say, well, it's 170 years since slavery. Haven't you been able to pull yourself out yet? How? It's not just slavery. It's then Jim Crow law. It's then we can't get mortgages in the 1970s in parts of this country. We are now just at a place. This is the first generation that we can truly build wealth and not be an anomaly and pass it to the next generation. So I would be doing my own people a disservice to not share the information as I am getting it in real time. As I am living it, as I'm succeeding at it, I want them to know in real time, because I don't want the next generation to have to wait. They can begin to build it now. And because of this knowledge, I'm not just sharing it with Black people. It's
with everybody.
Something that is helpful from every person of color. Your ancestors, when they came here, I look at the Latino. Now, I don't know, where's your family from?
My father's from Mexico. My mother's from Puerto Rico.
Okay, so it's the craziest thing that we did when it comes to Mexico. We need you here, farmers. We need you here. Come pick our oranges. Come pick our strawberries. We need you here. We need you here. We need you here. Oh, wait. We don't want you here anymore. So now that you've built your families here, go back to Mexico. And so then you have all these generations of family members that have had to hide because this is all they know. So now let's take me. If America decided you can't be here anymore, you're actually African, go back to Africa. Do you know how hard it would be for me to rebuild there? And so when I'm sharing the information, it's not just for my people, it's for all women, all people of color, 70% of this country. Now, I still talk to the other 30%, love them. But my focus is on pulling up that 70%, the 50% of women who couldn't vote until a little over 100 years ago. That's my focus.
So when we talk about slavery, that story interjects your current business.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about the intellect of the African community and we talk about what one is capable when they understand the language, and girl, that you are teaching the language of wealth.
Yes.
The language of wealth, because there's a difference between riches and wealth, and it's same in the Latino community. When you get riches, you spend the riches, you bring your family up, you do nice things, but there's nothing for the next generation.
Yes.
So can we go there and can we talk about the intellect of a former slave who changed Tennessee, the Tennessee spirits industry, and then how your story intersects with that? Because I believe that's part of your origin story, but there is like the
intersection. What I love about Tennessee whiskey, even though it is bourbon, it is a straight bourbon whiskey, it is more difficult and it takes longer to make Tennessee whiskey than bourbon, but it is still categorized as bourbon.
Okay.
We are a bourbon, but bourbon can't be us unless they live in Tennessee, unless it's made and produced in Tennessee. But the other big piece is the only way you can be a Tennessee whiskey is if you follow every single regulation of bourbon, plus one additional step, and that is a filtration that was brought in by Africans. To this day, if you go to Africa, I believe it's more than 90% of the trees are cut down for wood fuel and charcoal. And the charcoal is to filter the water and to purify the food. Well, you have all these slaves here who learn how to distill from the Irish and the Scottish, and they're tasting it and they're like, what is this? Right? Because what they're distilling in Africa are fruits. They're like, even the distillate has some sweetness to it. It has some flavor to it. They get here and they're distilling rye. And they're like,
what is this?
What is this? And so I don't know. I know they had to make it for their masters, but I feel like back when they got back to their own place, they're like, okay, let's just filter this. Let's filter this through some charcoal because I don't know how they're drinking this. But that's how this process comes in. And what I love about our origin story, the story of Uncle Nearest being the first known African-American master distiller, the teacher of Jack Daniel, the mentor of Jack Daniel, and the only known master distiller for his first distillery, which was distillery number 7, Jack Daniel distillery number 7. And when you look at that and go, wait a minute, the only way you can get Tennessee whiskey is by following a process that came in with the Africans.
Yes.
That is extraordinary to me because that means there's not another spirit in this entire country. And we're a country built on spirits. God bless us. Whether the market is up or the market is down, we're drinking. But when you think about it, there is no greater all-American brand that you can track back to the 19th century because it's the only one that we can positively say and prove a Black person and Black people were there at the beginning, at the founding of it.
Okay. Amy, I want you asking another question. Can I hop in real quick?
Yes.
You're up next.
Okay.
What's the story? How do you start this?
Yeah.
Like, talk to us about you being on an airplane.
Yeah. So I flew to Singapore. I had been investing in other people for a good portion of my adult life. I was investing in people, investing in real estate, which, by the way, I was able to invest in people because of real estate. So we'll go back to ownership but investing in other people's businesses. And there were these two people that I had invested in their business. And it was, let's just say the business and the brand was incredible, but I learned a valuable lesson in that you do not invest in a brand, you invest in the founders. And if the founders are not aligned with how you move in the earth, that's the best way I can put it, and how you treat people and how you take care of people and seeing people as more valuable than a thing. If you're not aligned there, there's no way that you can succeed. And so I knew that business, at that point, I had probably lost about $1.5 million in that business. I was on my way to losing, I think the final tally was a little over $2 million I lost in this business. But around the 1.5 million loss mark, I was just exhausted of having these conversations with the founders of, you can't treat people any kind of way. You can't spy on your employees. You cannot blind carbon copy yourself on all the emails coming through your employee without your employees knowing. You can't, you literally, you're spying on them. This is not, number one, it's not normal, but number two, you just can't treat people that way. And so I was so tired of having that conversation. I literally told my husband, he was going to Singapore for business. I was like, you already have a hotel room. Can I just add an airline ticket and just go? And I don't even think I had but a few days notice where I booked the ticket and I flew with him to Singapore. And it's the next morning that on the cover of the New York Times edition, I see a photo of, it's all white men. One white man I very clearly recognized, which was Jack Daniel, because I think whether we drink Jack Daniel or not, we all know what he looks like. We see his, like you walk up the street in Nashville, you don't feel like you're his cousin. You know what he looks like, whether or not you drink Jack. And I knew who he was, but the photo was pointing out the fact that the person to his right was a black man. And a photo taken, we now have pegged it at about 1904. A photo taken in 1904, not only would you not have a black person in the photo, if you did have them, they would be on the outskirts. They would not be right next to him. But the more important thing is that when you actually look at the full photograph that isn't cropped, Jack Daniel didn't just have this black man to the right of him, who we now know to be Nearest Green's son, George. He didn't just have this black man to the right of him. He ceded the center position of the photo in its entirety to the black man. So I'm looking at this photo and the headline says, Jack Daniel embraces a secret ingredient, help from a slave. And at that time, I was about to turn 40 years old. And in the 40 years of living, there is not a single ubiquitous brand that I could have pointed to and said a black person was proven to be at the beginning. We hear different stories like Lucille in Houston, where Pillsbury kept trying to buy her instant biscuits recipe and she refused to sell it to him. And then all of a sudden they came up with their own, and her family says they reverse engineered it. It's probably true, but we can't prove it. And so I'm reading this story, and Jack Daniels is admitting that this African American was there at the beginning, but they're saying he was there at the beginning as a teacher. And my question was it more? And can we prove it? And so that started this journey of, if this story is true, for the first time, we can actually prove without a shadow of a doubt we were business people. And we're going back to the 19th century as business people, as craftsmen, as someone that is so incredibly valuable that we cannot make this whiskey to this day without following the process that he taught Jack Daniel. So it was an interesting story to me, because it was a story I believed would not just lift up African Americans, but the fact that he had ceded the center position of this photograph to this African American man said to me that Jack was making sure America would never be able to erase this man. No matter what our country went through, this mentor of his teacher, his master distiller, and then his descendants who continued to work alongside Jack, that America would never be able to erase them. And his plan worked.
That's right.
Yes, it did work.
Because even when they tried to erase him, they couldn't, because there was this doggone photo.
Yes, gotta love a good photo. Okay, so much has gone on from that moment that you saw that newspaper to where you are now. But a big part of your story is raising the money to make this happen. There's a lot of people listening that have no idea how they would even start with that. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what that looked like for you, and also some tips for others that want to do this, especially women in the room, because I know you talk a lot about that.
I absolutely do. So you see a lot of headlines about how little of money women and Black people get from venture capital and private equity. And my response to that is always stop pitching them.
Ooh.
Because if we don't give them our businesses, they will find more value in our businesses. But if they're the ones that keep turning us down, there's no value being built there.
Okay.
Stop giving them the ability to take your ideas. Don't pitch them, period. We live in a country that has over 23 million millionaires, all trying to figure out deal flow.
Yes.
The deal flow usually comes through these VC and these PEs. So then you have all these millionaires who may have just become millionaires by making smart real estate investments, by building it up the hard way, but they don't really get deal flow. They're looking for good investments. But the thing that is key, and I share this with women and people of color more than anything, 60% of your pitch is your confidence.
Oh, yeah.
60%.
Because I don't want to get off topic, but watching you and listening to you, I wanted to know, were you born with this confidence? Because a lot of people listening don't have what you have.
Yeah.
But can you find it? So we might need to come back to that. But 60% confidence, they're listening. They're like, well, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Because that's not me right now.
Yeah. So let me,
Okay.
I will
put a pin in that.
I will put a pin in that and deal with the confidence piece.
Okay,
When I
good.
was 20 years old, I tried to commit suicide twice. And on the other side of the second time, with, tube down my nose, with charcoal being pumped into my stomach, which you gotta love the tie to the charcoal, right?
It was in your future.
It is literally the charcoal that purified my body so that I'm still living is the same thing that purifies Uncle Nearest. And you have this me laying in this hospital bed, and for the second time trying to end my life. And in that moment, I realized if I can't take me out, nobody can take me out.
Yes.
And so I've lived my life from that moment forward with a belief that if I can't take me out, neither can you.
Neither can you.
And so you have a level of confidence when you're walking through the world and you don't believe that anybody can harm you. So that's where that
comes
from.
But for somebody who doesn't have that, we walk around in a constant state from our previous former family's lineage heritage that a tiger is just around the bend. And even though we don't live in that state anymore, our brains have been hardwired to live in the fear and the doubt. And so as we build businesses, it's like, well, nobody can take me out. You're like, I don't know what's around that
that's
corner.
true.
Yeah.
And how do we, even dwelling with the possibility of the tiger, having not gone through the charcoal, how do we walk into a room?
Faith.
Okay.
Faith. I don't believe that I walk into any room that somebody in that room invited me to. I am a believer that the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord. He turns it whatever way he wants. That means that you all thought you invited me on this podcast. But that wasn't actually your decision. That's how I look at everything. And it's not an ungratefulness. I'm enormously grateful. But the gratitude goes first and foremost to God, because he placed it on both of your hearts to have me here. When people walk into a store and they buy Uncle Nearest, I don't think they're just buying Uncle Nearest because they see it's the most awarded bourbon of the last 5 years in a row, although our marketing is real clear about that, right?
Yes,
right? But it is something that causes them to say, I want to support that brand. There's a lot of great bourbons out there. Why Uncle Nearest? What makes them feel drawn to that bottle? I don't believe it's just them. And so for me, when I'm looking at it, it's the faith piece. And I tell people all the time, do not look for advice from me if you're an atheist. I have nothing for you. I'm not being funny. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being an atheist. I'm saying that I can't help you because my foundation is faith. Everything I've built is on faith. I risk at a level that most people would not risk at, but it's because I believe God has my back on this. And I believe that this is fully aligned with my purpose. And so every single test, I'm not looking at it as something that will take me out. I'm looking at that test as something that's going to teach me a lesson that is going to take me to a higher level.
So is that your way of thinking when it doesn't work out, when you do crash and burn?
Absolutely.
In business specifically?
Absolutely. I tell people, I have a screenshot on my cell phone of when my bank account was negative $1.4 million because it did not go according to plan.
Whoa. Okay, so in
I
that
keep
moment, Okay, I want everyone to hear. You had a bank account that was $1.4 million in the red.
Yes.
And in that moment, what did you tell yourself, or what did you do
Yep.
so that you didn't say, I've had moments where I'm like, maybe I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like that was sometimes the first thought. You didn't go there.
No.
What was your first thought?
I was built for this.
Damn.
I was built for this.
How do you do
I'm
that,
going to have to apologize to some people whose checks are about to bounce. You have to have a true belief that you are in your purpose. I am living in my purpose. I'm
believe it
confident.
to your core.
I know it to my core.
How do you get there? There's people listening that they are doubting that right
Yeah.
now. And I know you said faith.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people listening will fall into faith, but
Yeah.
some people don't have the amount of faith you have.
Yes.
So how do we make it also concrete for them?
Yeah. God says, test me in this. So the way that you'll know truly if you are living in your purpose are
Yes.
two things. If you go back to the way you were before the world molded you, you'll know where your purpose is. Because if you look at a child at the age of 6, at the age of 7 years
Yeah.
old, and you don't try to change them, they'll tell you who they are. They were born with purpose. So I knew even as a young kid, I wasn't trying to lead people and people were still following me. I got kicked out of the 9th grade because my English teacher called my parents. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was doing my assignments, but she told my parents that she doesn't know what kind of day she's going to have till I walk through the door. And that
Okay.
I had too much power in her classroom. I'm in the 9th grade.
Okay, I'm loving this story.
But keep in mind, I wasn't popular. I wasn't one of the popular girls at all. So it wasn't a situation where I was leading because I was popular. People were just following me.
You were just who you are. You're famous for saying, walk into a room as if you own it.
Yes.
Not that you weren't invited.
Nope.
There's no seat for you there, but walk into the room. And I feel
Absolutely.
as though I think we can all learn what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but I do believe you were born with it.
I do believe I was born with it. But here's the thing. Most entrepreneurs that are supposed to be entrepreneurs, they were as well.
Agreed.
So now
Yes.
you have to go back to who were you before the world molded you? I think the greatest gift that I was given is that I left home at 15 years old, that I dropped out of high school. There was no molding of me in college. There was no molding of me in high school. No one was telling me to become someone to fit in.
Who were you before?
Who were you
molded?
before? So for me, when people see me and they look at my level of confidence, I go, this is just 7-year-old Fawn fully realized. That's all I am. I was never molded. I never let the world mold me to be someone other than who I am. And so for a lot of entrepreneurs, if you're truly an entrepreneur, you have to undo that molding.
Yes.
Because that molding is where the insecurity comes from. Because you're not actually your authentic you. So you have to go back to the place of who was I before the world told me who I should be.
And that's where you find your confidence.
That's where you find it. And then that's also where you find your purpose. So I know that I'm an entrepreneur and I was built to lead if I go back to 7 years old, right?
Yes.
So once I already know I am an entrepreneur, I was born to lead, then how do I double down on that knowing? I test it. If I see a door that is open to me, I walk through it. I have a very simple prayer that I have prayed for the last 28 years, 27 years. And it is, Lord, if this is for me, open the door in such a manner that no man can close, including me. Because we have a really bad tendency of closing doors for ourselves that God did not intend for us to close. Ooh. And the second part of that prayer is, if this is not for me, close the door in a manner that no person can open, including myself.
Okay.
Well, what that does is it allows me to just walk with complete abandon
Yes.
through every door that's open, because I believe that if it's not for me, he'd shut it. So my bank account being negative $1.4 million, that wasn't saying to me, close this business. That was saying to me, pivot. Same business, because you're opening these other doors. You're opening up a new way for me to build this company, a different financial model. At the time, I was literally spending so much cash on inventory. It's very expensive to build inventory with whiskey, because you're literally laying down for something you cannot sell for 4 years. It's very different from
Whoa,
almost
that's
every
very
other
different.
industry, right?
Yes.
So now you're forecasting, what will I be selling in 4 years? You're paying for it now, but you won't get it for another 4 years. So for a very long time, banks wouldn't loan any money because it's based on what your revenue is, what your inventory is. So us spending all cash flow was going to pay for it. And so when that happened, literally within days, we get a phone call from someone who we do business with who says, hey, there's this new company and they want to just pay for all of your whiskey now that you're laying down. And then you can buy it back from them in 4 years at this,
What?
but it's only yours.
Okay, that's wild.
Exactly. But that's what I'm looking for.
The open door.
When something is going wrong, I don't get into the moment of focusing on what is going wrong. I never focus on what is going wrong. I am looking for, okay, if this is supposed to be where I'm supposed to be, there's an open door somewhere. So I don't know if you remember that movie. Oh gosh, what was that movie with it starts with an I and it had, oh my goodness, it's going to drive me crazy. It was with Matt Damon and he's going through all these doors. Do you know what
yes,
it starts
yes.
with an I.
I can't.
It's going to be crazy. But anyway.
People
but
are
that's-
screaming
but that-
it at
but,
the
but that
computer.
is, but that is literally my life. Is I just keep
going.
going through the doors. And it's not until I get through the door that I know where I'm supposed to go next. And if I'm not supposed to go
That's the part
there,
right there.
then that door is not going to open for me.
Can we
And-
go back?
yes.
Can we go back? Don't forget that question.
Okay, no, go.
Because I feel like there is somebody who's listening right now and they couldn't move past the point of this particular section of the conversation. So if you and I or a listener was sipping on whiskey and we're sitting on a porch and we're looking out at Lynchburg. This is where the distillery is. This is the
My distillery is in Shelbyville, which is one city away. Jack Daniel Distillery is in Lynchburg. Jack was a brilliant marketer. He built that town around him. He deserved to keep that town. I did not want for him to have to share the spotlight with Nearest, but I wanted Nearest to have his own spotlight.
Ooh.
So we bought what's now close to 500 acres that we have built on that distillery, and we're right next door in Shelbyville.
That's beautiful
That's
in
good.
it of itself.
That would own the land.
Oh,
But
land.
you can
Listen.
celebrate somebody else's land.
Yes.
And let you have that
And
story.
still
But
own
this
your
is
own.
your own land.
Yeah.
So you and I are sitting in Shelbyville and we're sipping whiskey. And I am saying that I am born to be an entrepreneur. There's not a doubt in my mind. However, I've been conditioned. I've allowed myself to be conditioned. I've bought into the story. So when we go back to this idea that, Fawn, I am the kind of person that walks into a room and I have my head down. And I'm like, oh, how do I have that? So you and I are sitting here and I'm like, it's me. I know this. But I don't have the tools. Do you have a framework? Talk me off that ledge. Help me step into the confidence to say, I'm not supposed to be in this room, but I'm going to own this room.
Well, here's the issue. If you think that you're in the room because of you, that's why you're insecure.
Thank you.
Okay, that kind of unlocked for me.
That was like a little God juke.
Yes, I agree.
That is so for me, when I'm walking into the room, I am saying, I am going into this room because this is where God called me to be. And I am going to, there's one or two things are going to happen in this room. Either I am here to deposit or I am here to withdraw. That means that I am here to either inspire other people and I will not get anything from it from anybody in that room, or I am here to learn lessons, learn gems, and they're going to come with me. But either way, the withdrawal or the deposit is still coming from God. So I think that for me personally, when I come across people that are insecure, that do not own the room, that feel as though they have to just kind of be in a corner when they go into a room, that's because they're doing it of themselves. That's how I used to be. I'm an introvert. Like people get so confused about introversion and extroversion. It simply means how you recharge. I can go my whole life as a hermit. Like, I don't need to be around human beings.
Yes.
Listen, when we
We
came
get
out
that.
on the other side of COVID and people wanted to start having
get
in-person
back.
meetings, I was like, no. Zoom for life.
Yes,
What are we doing here?
yes.
And so I am perfectly content going my whole life just being by myself. That's how I am wired. And so I really had to teach myself going into the rooms how to own the room. And all that meant for me was I am going in as a daughter of the Most High God. When have you ever seen a princess put her head down? Ever. You walk into the room and you own the room. And so that's how I go in. Now, again, if you're an atheist, I can't help you. I can't. I don't say that in a negative way. It is just truth with a capital T. I can't help you if you do not have a foundation to stand on. But if you do, and you walk into that room and go, this isn't me, this is the God in me. I don't need to know everything about what people are talking about in this room. I think a lot of people get insecure that they don't know enough when they walk into a room. You walk into a room with a bunch of billionaires, centimillionaires, and they're talking, and you feel like they're talking up here. You don't know. Walk in with confidence and listen with confidence. You don't have to talk. I can walk in a room and be completely silent. People will still notice me.
Yes, they will.
You know, I once heard the saying that if you walk into a room and you wonder who the alpha is, it is not you.
Yes.
And I feel like you never walk into a room and wonder who's in charge.
I do
here.
not.
Yeah,
I do not.
I do
not.
About you.
I was just doing Byron Trott, who I absolutely adore, who's the founder of BDT, right? He's got like a $60 billion fund, right? BDT and MSD. And we just had a big event at our distillery where we pour into 133 BIPOC founders and we bring all the tools they need, investors, national account buyers, like CEOs of distributorships, CEOs of control states. If you are a BIPOC founder and you come, we give you every tool that you need to be able to succeed when you leave out of the door. We basically, this industry is full of gatekeepers. So because of who I am, I can ask for the gatekeepers to come from behind the gate so that these people can connect with them directly, get their phone numbers and get their contact information, all the rest of that. So Byron, I was interviewing as a part of this thing. And as I was introducing him, and he comes out onto the stage and we're talking about this very thing. And I said, ask Byron, did I have any kind of fear in asking him to invest in my company? And so I said it right before he comes out. And so he comes out and he sits down and he says, she didn't have any fear, but I did. He didn't say fear. He said she wasn't nervous, but I was.
I don't blame her. Yes.
And you're talking about who is considered the modern day John D. Rockefeller. Is Byron, like that's what he has been called since he was the head of the chairman of investment banking for Goldman Sachs. He is the modern day John D. Rockefeller. And he's like, she wasn't nervous, but I was. Because it's not about that. It is, I'm walking in, I fully own who I am as a child of God. I fully own it. And I think one of the keys is I don't have an expectation or a desire for your respect.
Wow.
So for so many people, how other people respond to them is a part of what either motivates them or tears them down. I don't need your respect. I walk through the door with an assignment. I want to know why I'm in that room. Is it to deposit or is it to withdraw? When I'm in something like this, it is to deposit.
Yes, it is.
Every person who is listening to this, who is watching this, it is a deposit to them. That's why I'm in this room. But I might go into another room tonight and I am there to withdraw, to learn, to add. And so that keeps a complete balance of my life.
I love that framework. I think people can really use that. And when you were talking about the guy from BET, what's his name again?
BDT, Byron Trott,
He's a big gun. He's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk to you about how, if you're a smaller brand, a smaller business, how the heck do you compete with the big guns? Because a lot of people are listening will even look at my business or Jasmine's business and think, well, they have really big businesses, so I can't compete with them.
Yeah.
How do you get in the game when you're still a small business?
Yeah, you do something different.
Okay.
So coming into the industry, there had never been a Black woman. There had never been a person of color. There had never been a woman to succeed at the highest level in this industry as a founder, the only other woman ever to build and succeed is her I can't pronounce her first name. I think it's Marilee Key, the person who owns BuzzBalls, who founded BuzzBalls.
Okay.
And outside of that, there's never been a woman to found a successful company in the spirits in the spirits industry, and there has never been a Black person ever. So coming into the industry, all these people had advice for me, but the entire industry were white men. White men represent 30% of this country, yet 100% of this industry when I came into it in terms of founding and owning. It didn't make sense for me to take their advice.
Okay.
Because it's very clear that I can't do it that way. Every person who came before me failed. So why would I follow a blueprint that clearly was not made for me? I had to create my own blueprint.
What did you do that was different?
The opposite of what everybody said to do. No, I'm not being funny.
That is risky.
Entrepreneurialism is risky.
Amen.
If you're afraid of risk, don't be an entrepreneur.
Amen. Okay, I can get behind that.
Can I dovetail something right
Yes.
now? Because I actually feel like as we're gearing up to round out this episode, I actually think that one thing that we're going to do right about here, how to compete with the bigger dogs, and you had said do something differently.
Yeah.
And then right before we started, Hobie, Amy's husband, well, he was out looking for a particular type of Uncle Nearest. And he had gone to multiple places and they said, we don't have it. And so we had talked about how that's creating really good buzz.
Yes.
Because now the retailers are like, well, we need this Uncle Nearest.
Yeah.
What can somebody who's smaller, how do they do it differently? Can you give us 3 ideas that somebody right now is like, listen, this is the action item of like, you're good at creating buzz.
So let me tell you, I will use that exact example. We were completely out of stock in the market. We didn't have glass. We didn't, like, it was a period of time that would take down almost everybody in this industry if they were dealing with what we were dealing with.
Like you out of stock of everything.
Out of stock. Like you could not find Uncle Nearest on the shelf. We were completely out of stock. And so I told my chief business officer, we're going to run a commercial and we're going to spend $1 million running a commercial on Uncle Nearest. Because people are going to go into the stores and ask for Uncle Nearest. So think about it this way. That retailer is ringing stuff up all day long.
Yes.
They don't know what they're ringing up. They don't care. But every day, all day, people are walking in asking for the same brand that they have none of on their shelf. So now a retailer, just a person a checker, is now Googling, what is Uncle Nearest?
Yes.
They're learning the story. They're learning about the brand. So when you talk about risk, that's a huge risk. But when we went back in stock, how quickly we were out of stock because scarcity marketing works. So instead of focusing on the challenge and the fact that we were out of stock everywhere, instead of freaking out my investors and going, why can't we find it? I was like, scarcity marketing, y'all. This is momentary. But we are going to double down on the marketing efforts. We're going to spend more money while we are out of stock than we have ever spent.
Okay, that made an even bigger issue. So real quick, I know we're rounding it out, but you're willing to get really uncomfortable and stay there.
Yes.
And I feel like that's one of your secrets to success.
I'm not comfortable staying there. I want to get out.
You want to get out.
But what I want to do is get out as quickly as possible, which means focusing on the problem is not going to be the solution.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yes.
So
go.
So we want 3 things that somebody can do.
Yes.
Now our power play is speaking to our listeners. Like we know. So what she did was scarcity marketing. So Amy, we're gonna play a game for the listener.
Okay.
How do we apply scarcity marketing for somebody who has a course?
Yes.
And I'm gonna do it for somebody who provides a service. So I'm going to say that this person's a business coach and they've reached out their max. They can't take any more. At this point in time, people want to pull back on their marketing. But if I were to apply this scarcity marketing, I'd be like, I sold out of my coaching sessions. Get on the wait list. We sold out in 5 hours. Can we do it in 4? So that's like us taking this big idea from a multi-billion-dollar brand, billion-dollar brand, and bringing it down to a listener for a course. How do we incite that? And then I want to go to another tactic.
Okay,
so
got
get those wheels going.
Okay. So if you have a digital course and you
want to
incite scarcity. So one thing you do is you create a VIP access to the course. So you've got your course and then you've got VIP. But here's the secret. You only have 50 spots.
Yes.
And you charge a lot more for it.
Yes, you do.
And now it's going to sell out quickly. And sorry, again, wait list.
Yes.
But the fewer spots you have and the more expensive it is, it's exclusive and people want it and there's scarcity there.
And it creates a halo.
Yes.
For what is less expensive. So when something sells out at the highest amount, then what you have that is lower receives the halo from that.
Yes.
Okay. So
love that.
How do we drive? Like, so we're going to the small business owner. How do we do something to stand out? What is something else that you did with this brand or any of your other brands that was different? And then we're going to try to apply it immediately to the listener.
Yeah. Coming into the industry, everyone told me, do not expand quickly. That doesn't work. You have to really own your backyard. So own Tennessee, and then within 5 to 7 years, try to get into the states that touch Tennessee.
Okay.
And I told my chief business officer, I said, we're going into all 50 states in less than 2 years. It had never been done before. Every distributor told us we were crazy. And I said, once again, no person of color has ever succeeded. That playbook doesn't work for us. So us going into all of the states, that meant that we could use earned media. Earned media does not like to talk about local, like unless it's a local press, right? Your CBS This Morning, Today's Show, Good Morning America, they're not interested in a local story. They want a national story. We could not get that level of national press and it actually be helpful for us until we were nationwide. So we pushed out almost immediately an e-commerce, getting into as many states as we could, and then we flipped on those states as quickly as possible. And people kept saying, but you can't afford to do it. Oh, earned media. They're talking to everyone. That is so much better than the billboard you're paying for. And so that was one of the key things that we did. The other key thing.
Hold on, is that part of the earned media? Because we could save that for the third.
Yes and no. So the other piece is when I came into the industry, everyone said nobody cares about awards in the spirits industry.
Let's take that for the third one. Okay. All right. So then this one was earned media. You decided to flip the current order of the business. So get your mind going for a course.
I'm nervous about this one. Okay.
No, because we got it. So what she had was CBS in the morning show talking about it. So coach at home is like, CBS ain't going to talk about me on the morning show. However, earned media plays a different role if you could reach out to other people who serve a similar demographic.
Yes.
So while it's not the morning show, there could be like an accountant who is speaking to his or her accounting client and saying, oh, you want to know what? There's this business coach. So what we can do is we can create synergy between both of us. So we're having earned media, not in a national market, but somebody who's tangential to the industry, somebody else speaking on behalf of your business. That would be earned media in a smaller way. For a digital course, how might we have somebody else be vouching for the thing that it is that we do? And if you ain't got it, I can jump on it.
You get it. Go.
Having somebody create a bonus for a course.
Oh, and I did this with you.
That's why I said it.
So, wait, that's so good, Jasmine. So Jasmine created a bonus for my own digital course all about social media. I don't teach social media. It's not my expertise, but it's a huge part of selling digital courses online. So she comes in, she starts talking about this. She's talking about it on her channel. I'm talking about it on mine. And now it's expanding that way.
Correct.
So absolutely.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. The third thing was not focusing on awards.
Yeah. So coming into the industry, every industry leader said awards don't matter. All of the big guys for years had done studies, the consumer testing, and consumer testing said consumers only care about it if it's in wine. The only time they care about it in spirits is if it's one award show out of San Francisco and if you get the top prize. None of the prizes underneath, just that top one. And that's what I heard coming into it. So I looked at that and said, consumers may not care if we win a award or 2 awards, but if we become the most awarded bourbon in the world, they'll pay attention. So we were the only company, only spirit brand that was submitting every single one of our bottles to every competition around the world. So when we began stacking up all the double golds, and then all of a sudden, it mattered.
Yeah.
It was our marketing campaign for 2020 was the most awarded bourbon of 2019. Then it was 2021, 2022, 2023. For 5 years in a row, that has been our marketing campaign. And so now I'll see most awarded tequila in the world. Somebody's running that. Most awarded liqueur in the world, right? And so something that consumers had previously tested to not caring about.
Yes.
All I did was say, well, they may not care about one, but let me create a story that's media worthy that will make them care.
Interesting.
Okay, I like the media worthy. I'm going to go with that angle. Okay. So when I'm thinking about digital courses, creating your story around your course. So I teach people how to create courses, and there's always a story of why they're teaching what they're doing, why they're creating. Creating your story and then shopping it around to media is something that they don't do enough of. And there is power in that. And so I believe that you've got to do the work to get that out there. And one thing that you said that I want everyone to hear is awards. I don't think if people know, you have to submit for these awards.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they think the award should come to them. them.
No.
So that's a little caveat. She went out and she submitted for these awards in order to make it happen.
So good. And no, there might be somebody listening, so I just want to like get super granular with that. I actually saw an article of a photographer who teaches photography courses, but the catch line, her press was how she makes $200,000 a month.
Yeah,
so
it was
the
a different
catch line,
angle.
it was a different angle, but what it ended up doing was having that halo effect that you spoke so kindly of. And I'm like, okay, so getting people in that mind framework. If I was a coach and I would want media, then I would have to have a stake. I would have to have an opinion about what it was. And so I would go in and I would have a defining line. This is the hill I'm going to die on. This is the thing I'm going to be about. And then I would have to create content that is worthy of being featured on a media outlet.
Yeah.
And don't
that
keep
is
pivoting. Double down on what that has been our marketing campaign for 5 years. When you look at the best marketing campaigns, they double down.
It's saying the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. I do love that. Fantastic. Yeah. Double down on what's already working for you.
Just because the world keeps changing doesn't mean you have to. There's something to be said about stability.
Yes. I like that angle. Yes.
So we've went through a lot. Like
Yeah, we
went through
did.
a lot.
This is
I feel like
good.
people are finding themselves in the story. They're having action, taking items. We did that little like ad hoc game of ours. Like, we're nerds, like business game. No, you don't.
Exciting.
Somebody's listening. If you could sit across from somebody, you could pour them a little Uncle Nearest, and they take my place on the porch, and they're on their journey, beginning, middle, or end. What do you say now from your vantage point as you look out on the land you own? What do you tell them?
Dream bigger. Fail harder.
So good. I have to make a correlation. Our guest before you, and you don't even know this, talked about impossible goals.
Yes.
I feel like you live and
I do.
breathe impossible goals.
I do.
This has been incredible.
And they're only impossible till I make them possible.
Amen.
Yeah.
I feel fired up by you. This was incredible. Thank you.
Let's go buy land. Let's start building businesses. Get that digital IP. Where's my URL?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is another episode of the Jasmine Star Show. If nothing else, if all the things that we spoke about, it comes in one ear and out the other, may you remember Fawn's exact words. I am built for this, and I am in my purpose. And if we walk into every room with our head held high, understanding that there is a divine purpose for us to be there, that we will withdraw or we will deposit. And we are there to simply say, I'm going to do it my own way, and I will hold my head high. Thank you, Fawn, for being here. Thank you for empowering. Thank you for your time, your energy, and watching and listening to the Jasmine Star Show. You can connect with Fawn. Where do people find you? How do they go deeper with you?
Yeah, they can go to anything that is at Uncle Nearest or fawn.weaver on Instagram.
Speaking of Instagram, this is a side note. Speaking of Instagram, the queen hypes up her own brand. She's at the airport, right? She's at the I'm watching her stories. I mean, here's the thing. You gotta love your business so much. You gotta be so dang successful that you out here hustling on her own account. Fawn, what's your Instagram? Shout it out.
Fawn.weaver.
Fawn.weaver, right? She's at a bar in an airport, top shelf, let it be known, and they have a custom cocktail with Uncle Nearest. And then there's the bartender not knowing who she's actually speaking to, and Fawn's out there on the DL filming it. Like, can you make it? It looks so delish. So if you are not talking about the products that you are creating, I question if you love it enough. Be out here to be your number one hype person. Ames.
Fawn, one little plug. Tell people about your new book coming out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Love and Whiskey, the remarkable true story of Jack Daniel, his master distiller Nearest Green, and the improbable rise of Uncle Nearest.
Okay, first of all, that is a sexy title. When does it come out?
It comes out on June 18th.
Okay, very soon.
We're pre-ordering.
We are pre-ordering. Our pre-orders were so high. We did, the first print was at 50,000 books. The pre-orders were so high, we had to run a second printing, and we're still
okay. That's very
a little ways out.
As an author, I'm very jealous, and that's very rare.
It's beyond rare.
Whoa,
it's beyond rare.
Gonna be big.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
ladies and gentlemen, future New York Times bestselling author, Fawn Weaver. Check out Uncle Nearest. It is an honor and it is a blessing. Be blessed. Thank you, guys.